big stories in the papers this morning and try and understand what is behind the headline. And joining me, or behind the headlines rather, joining me in studio to do this, let me introduce my guests in studio. I'll start from my far right there, Honorable Peter Mathuki, the Secretary General of WIPA. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Right next to me is Honorable Mithika Linturi, the Senator Meru County. Welcome to the program as well.
Thank you very much.
Let's immediately take you to the big stories in the papers this morning. We start with the front page of the Daily Nation. How Uhuru's 2 billion Kenya shillings got lost in the forest. And they are calling it ghost foliage. Ghost meaning it's like it's invisible, it's not there. In a nutshell, 100,000 trees planted in 205 schools, meaning every school received trees worth 10 million Kenya shillings. That's the graft. This was part of Uhuru's greening project, designed to ride on huge primary schools network. However, a dossier that the task force did not make public the contents of in its second report to the CS in April is what has led to these revelations. CS Tobiko confirms receipt of the damning dossier, says he has handed it over to the EACC. So just when you thought that you had heard enough about scandals to last you at least 2 or 3 years, a new one. And this one, this is money that was to be used to train young school children on tree planting. Project was also to be used to establish tree nurseries in public primary schools countrywide. And money was also to be used to promote water harvesting in schools. But it appears that this money did not go to the right use. And if you go to page 6 of the same paper where there are more details, the headline there, pretty self-explanatory, how timber mafia walked away with 2 billion Kenya shillings. Detectives have launched investigations into how a 2 billion shilling allotment or allocation to a project launched by the president was stolen in what could turn out to be the most expensive tree planting drive in the country. I've told you what the money was for, but the revelations of this are contained in a confidential report by the recent task force that inquired into forest resource management and logging activities in the country. And there's a lot more details you can get on page 6 of the Daily Nation. I don't know if my guests have had a chance to sort of, ingest what is in this particular article, but let me get your initial reactions. Honorable Mathuki, let me start with you.
Thank you very much. Remember, we were here last week, and the story
Just last week,
and the story was corruption, corruption, corruption. And that time we were talking about the NYS and the mains. Now we are talking about afforestation again. So, and you remember what we said is that what we call the big four, to me, may not even be a priority now. The priority should be how to fight this corruption thing. Because if you don't attack corruption at a time like this, you will never get the big four. So I would request, in fact, the president, I know, he knows it. He needs to concentrate and invest energy in ensuring that corruption is actually fought. We are talking of a week now. We have not heard of any arrests. We are talking of we are going to arrest. We are still investigating. If we have confirmed the money is lost, the buck should stop with somebody. In fact, if the ministers, the CSCs, respect the appointing authority, by now, if they should have taken responsibility, and whoever their ministry is mentioned, they should have gone by now to save Kenya. Because the Kenyan face actually is almost like going. We look at the region, look at the internationally, everyone is talking of corruption in Kenya. Where will we get as a country confidence, even to support some of the even critical problems, like even health, like even a number of things that are actually genuine and making the Wananchi suffer. So I think it's a high time. It's very unfortunate. We are talking of again deforestation and the mafias and the money again that has been sunk. Honestly, planting trees. If you ask Mheshimiwa and you ask everyone in their constituency, they put their own effort to invest and get trees and even give to the villagers to plant. Why do you have to invest this kind of money? The minister responsible for this, if it's environment, you should tell Kenyans where the money is. By now, if they have any moral standing, they should have said, for the sake of this country, for the sake of saving face of this country, let me step aside so some of these things can be investigated. And you get Kenyans who have records that have no questions. Fair. So it's very unfortunate that we are still talking of corruption at a time like this, the second week, third week, a month running as a country. It's very unfortunate and very painful.
Fair, unbelievable. And for you watching, of course, with new revelations every day and a new one this week, the one that you're seeing on your screen, let us know what your thoughts are. What do you expect from the DCI and the DPP this week? We are told that this week we'll see tears from some of the NYS suspects. What are your personal expectations? 22422 is the SMS line. Use the hashtag #PowerBreakfast on social media, at Citizen TV Kenya on Twitter and Facebook, and we'll be taking a look at some of your SMSs a bit later on in the program. But Senator, let me get your initial thoughts on this.
But before I make any comment, kindly, with due respect and humility, allow me make a brief definition of what corruption is, because I've looked and I've listened to many Kenyans, and even the manner in which people try to explain this aspect of corruption is like we do not have a common understanding or definition or meaning about what corruption is. And I would want every Kenyan listening to this to really buy into my idea of definition, because it's completely simple. Corruption in the Kenyan context and how things have been seen to be is like that habit of picking money either by way of bribe or by, for example, inflating tenders or the sort with a view to acquiring money. But the meaning that I would want us to proceed with in terms of defining and addressing the issues of corruption is the simple meaning of corruption being the abuse or misuse of power or authority bestowed upon you either by the law, either by the constitution, either by on account of your academic qualification, by appointment or whatever it is for personal gain or for other reasons. Why I'm trying to expand the definition is because you realize that there are people that are committing even worse corrupt crimes by abuse of office, by abuse of authority bestowed upon them.
Do you have examples?
And the example, let me apply the example that you've just given about what this eye-catching headline, because I also feel, you know, when the nation writes how Uhuru 2 billion got lost, our idea is to catch the eye of the reader to see how Uhuru is getting involved. And at times can also be misleading, because this could also be corruption if indeed the issues mentioned in the newspaper themselves are not accurate, are not correct, or they are meant to sway the mindset of the reader when they are not facts. So I want to use this to explain this aspect. Uhuru is the President of the Republic of Kenya. Uhuru means well for the country. And Uhuru has a responsibility to ensure, for example, the constitutional provisions that Kenya must acquire 10% forest cover is achieved. And this will be part of his legacy. And when he does that, as the CEO of this country, his major business is to ensure that, yes, we have, this is the government policy, and this government policy has to be funded. Ensure that the money is allocated to make sure that the relevant government agencies responsible for planting trees are facilitated to ensure the planting of trees is done.
So he's
policy and oversight. That is where Uhuru's business will end, because he has done what is supposed to be done. And I condemn him, I commend him for what he's doing, and especially in this war. But you know now, if money has gone to Kenya Forest Service, or if money has gone to the Ministry of Environment to ensure that the government agenda of planting trees is realized, honestly, it will not be right say Uhuru is condoning corruption in this aspect. The best thing to do is whose duty is it? Who has been given, or whose power, who has been delegated that responsibility of applying the money so given, either to buy seedlings, to ensure that they are nurseries, so that children or schools can be given those trees to plant. I want to say here, when I was away, one of my schools in my constituency, Amwamba Primary School, then teacher called me and told me they were given trees to plant, to ensure that at least that aspect is realized. I was very happy about it, because when I was member of parliament, I used to apportion, to put money in my CDF funds to buy seedlings, to plant, and to ensure that the environment was protected. So I want to say very candidly that if by any chance you have been given responsibility to do something, you have not done it. And I also want to implore the public to really not to cast aspersions and to also invite them into my idea that criminal responsibility is individual. If money has been given, somebody has eaten the money, let us deal with that fellow who misused the money to do MBCD.
Okay.
But because the oversight mechanisms put in our laws or institutions are there that will put that person into account. But the other thing that Uhuru has done, which I'm very happy about, especially in these scandals, is to let the DCI lead the investigations. The Department of Criminal Investigations, in my view, is competent enough to deal with these aspects. When the investigations were being done by the EACC, most of them have been a flop. You will not get, they will not tell you that we've done convictions of the cases we've been investigating up to 50%. That has been a waste of money. Actually, that institution is at all stations. That is where, in fact, we must also go into looking. Because the also mandate is also limited. The issues that, in fact, if that department was to be, a department within the Office of the Criminal Investigations for purposes of doing these investigations, then work would even be better. Because they will probably have support of people that are interested in pursuing suspects that are led by evidence, other than by what.
And I think it's important to declare that you have had your run-in with the EACC. I think it's important for that to come out, because we don't have EACC here to defend themselves.
Let me tell you, I think it's common knowledge that it is in the public domain. My issue with the ACC is not personal. My issue with the ACC started in Parliament in 2018 when I pushed an amendment for the disbandment. That is my where I started with them. Started, they continued in my shows at NTV, trying to explain to how the country, how incompetent they are in the investigations and how they are biased. And then when they had an opportunity to deal with me, they got into me to embarrass me. I embedded them in court. The only thing I would say, because everybody knows, is that because of my misuse of office, and because I know they may as well be intending to go to the Court of Appeal, I will only want to ask them, if there's a wind, they can come, we'll go to the Court of Appeal. But the money that they are spending on such cases shouldn't be borne by them or individually, because they're continually wasting a lot of public funds.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mheshimiwa. Let me come back to you. He's raised an interesting point. He's talked about criminal responsibility should be with individuals. And I would want to come back to him later on to find out if he feels Uhuru could have done anything more in his capacity. But that's the next question. But let me get your reaction to some of the things that the senator has said.
Corruption has no other definition, no other meaning. It is about dishonesty. It's about fraudulence. By those in power or in responsibility who are misusing it. And that is what we are saying. And what we are saying is that those who have been given responsibility by the government, by the president, have abused that responsibility. And therefore, what we are saying, the buck of running this country stops with the president. And therefore, what we are saying, and we know, he knows, and we are not saying he's not doing it, we should by now have seen hands rolling. To me, that is very important. And to most of the Kenyans, because most of the Kenyans still are trying to grapple with a lot of very basic issues. And they see these kind of big monies. We are even talking of actually borrowing some support from our international partners. And they see 9 billion just disappear. And they have not seen an action up to date. Honestly, how would they take us serious as a country? So I think, President, we are not the ones to advise him, because he knows he has the right people to advise. But our take is that he should do better possibly than this. We should see those responsible, the ministries affected. By now, they should not be in office. It's not somebody, because when you start now talking of now those responsibility with the person, then when you go to the ministry now the back to the PS to the director to the clerk to somebody, and the thing will just disappear like this. It is now the highest responsibility, and the highest responsibility in this it is with the appointing authority. And who is appointing authority? It is the president. So I think he can do far much better than what is happening. And that is what actually most of the Kenyans would expect to see. Because you cannot, as a minister, say, now I've received some dossiers regarding these planting trees. You should have by now told Kenyans what is happening. Obviously, President Uhuru cannot be there with you to know what is happening, but it is actually you yourself. And if you don't, I think President now should take action, and the action is to tell all those involved to step aside. It's very painful. 9 billion Kenyan money. This kind of money is, again, we talked of mains, we are talking of Kenya Power, we are talking of pipeline, we are talking of... The corruption has become the word now, I tell you. And I think now is the right time we took responsibility. I remember some countries. I'll give an example, even neighboring countries. I remember when President Magufuli came into power, the first thing he said was, if you know somebody has stolen, you don't have to say, we are going to open a commission to investigate these fellows done. Simply deal with the person straight away and let other things do. So is other, even in Kigali, and possibly that's how you see the issues of good governance taking, some of these countries taking leadership in some of these matters. So I think, to me, and I will still repeat that, we will not get anywhere. We will not even achieve the big four, because the big four is the talk of everyone, if we still have the issues of corruption. Deal with the corruption. Those are the big four will fall in automatically.